Hey, buddy, I'm going to turn on the recording. So here we go, folks. Welcome, everybody, to our webinar today. It's, the 8th of April. We're in Calgary today. The sun is shining. It's 11:51 a.m., and we're really excited to be with you today. We've got Dr. Wayne Hammond with us, and we'll tell you a little bit about him and Connie Jacob. And so welcome to the webinar today. And, really, we started these webinars, I think now, Connie, this is our fourth or third? Fourth. And, Connie and I through Wellness Innovate about a month ago now, because, as COVID-19 has come, there's been a relentless barrage of fear and stress, and a lot of it understandable because there's so many unknowns and so much uncertainty, and because we're all doing our best to follow the advice of, the public health officials and the experts. But, there's no doubt that in all of this, life still needs to go on. The workplace is still going on for many. And even for those whom it hasn't, we need to find a way to get through this. And, Wellness Innovate, our focus is creating safety. Our focus is changing the world by changing the workplace. And so, Connie and I decided to really lean into this. Could we do our part to make a difference? And so we've had some incredible guests so far. Today, we've got Dr. Wayne Hammond, and I'm going to just see if Connie wants to say a couple of opening words, and then Dr. Wayne Hammond, his bio is up on the screen, and so maybe Connie could also introduce him, and then we'll just dive into some questions.
Absolutely. Well, we welcome everyone. We're starting a little early because we just want to make sure that we get any questions that you have. So if you're just joining in the chat box, please feel free to post any questions. And maybe you're like me and didn't have all attendees, because you can actually personally message someone in the chat box. And so just make sure it says all attendees and all panelists, and it'll go to all of us. But I know there's a lot of people right now really wondering, what does it look like to be resilient right now in the midst of all this uncertainty? And you can hear many conversations in one day. You can hear fear and anxiety, and you can hear people who say there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's a very interesting atmosphere out there right now in our workforce. But the biggest thing that we have been hearing, the word that we keep hearing, is uncertain. And how do you be resilient when you feel like everything that you have known has literally been taken from underneath you? So this is what we really want to dive into today. Dr. Wayne Hammond, I've only had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times, but I just absolutely adore his work and everything that he has said. I just feel like he has so much wisdom to ground us today. And so you can see his bio here, working with Flourishing Life. He's a founding partner, holds an adjunct status with the Ambrose University, Cumming School of Medicine, University of Calgary, over 25 years, and working with youth in complexity. Crisis is no stranger to Dr. Wayne. He's not afraid of a challenge, and you can see all the amazing things that he has done in his bio. But we just want to welcome you here, Dr. Wayne.
Oh, it's certainly a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. And we actually gave people an opportunity to ask some questions in an email we sent before the webinar even started. And there's a couple of people who started with these two questions, and I'll just read the first one for you. One says, what would you consider, I believe this is from Lori, and Lori's on right now. What would you consider the biggest obstacle in building one's future in business lately?
Wow. I'll try to stick to what I know and what I've experienced. I think one of the challenges, it's a little bit of the Peter principle in business. If you keep doing the same thing that you've done to create today's success, tomorrow might be different. And so I've really kind of learned this concept that what I learned yesterday, I use today. But what I need to learn today is what I need to use tomorrow to be successful. It's that concept of adaptability, which kind of ties into the concept of resilience. That idea that you're continually sort of evolving your sense of who you are, what you have to offer, and how you connect the dots to those that you might be serving. Because the needs of people change over time. And if you're not continually sort of evolving your sense of what is it that I have to offer and how does it meet that need? And you take a look at the pandemic that's occurred right now. So a lot of people who might have had a business that was more on face-to-face or training in a public setting, that ability to quickly adapt or pivot to a more virtual approach. And what are the skill sets you need in order to learn that? So a resilient person is constantly opening themselves to new ways of doing things and shifts quickly. Doesn't wait for the crisis to gain momentum and then overwhelm them. So I think one of the biggest battles that we have around people and what holds them back is their mindset, their perception of who they are and how they understand the world around them. And in a few moments, I'll talk about some of those different mindsets. But in my life, I look back and say, where were the most important areas that I learned or I changed? It wasn't when things were successful. It was actually when things were quite challenging, because it forced me to take a step back and really think about what is it that I'm doing? How can I make it more meaningful? And how can I adapt it in a way that I can reach more people and, create that transformational change that I'm looking for?
What a phenomenal reminder that it's moments like these that shape us. I love that. That is so important for us to remember, that it's these times that really do cause us to have to, it's a disruption to what we know and forces us almost, there's no choice here but to become adaptable. What would you say to someone, when you mentioned mindset, it takes a mindset. What would you say to someone who's really struggling with their mindset to think, I don't know if I have what it takes to adapt right now?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's important for people is that we're not islands unto ourselves. Like, who's in our network of people that we can sort of reach out and have those discussions with? It's scary in the sense of fear. There's fear in some sense sort of incapacitates people. It gets them thinking in terms of, I wished I would have done this, or they kind of think from the past, and therefore they're held hostage by that. I think it's more about what could I do now, or what might be. And the idea that of stepping out of your comfort zone is actually the way that we grow. And the only way you can start shifting the way you think about yourself is by what you experience. And so by stepping out and taking a smart risk and actually seeing something different, even if you fail, it's kind of like, I learned something from that, I'm going to try it again. So some of those essential characteristics of resilience are being persistent, being adaptable, being open to new learnings. But another key aspect of resilience is the idea that I have relationships in my lives. So who are those people that I'm bringing into my inner circle that are going to cheerlead me when I don't feel like cheerleading myself? Or who are going to create a sense of hope and optimism as I share my ideas with or give guidance on them? So don't be afraid to draw upon those key relationships to step out of your comfort zone. But the key is step out of your comfort zone. And that's actually where we grow. We can get into Carol Dweck's work around how we learn and concepts like that. And I can talk a little bit about that. But you can shift your mindset, but you don't shift your mindset because somebody told you to do something. You shift your mindset because you experienced something.
That's
experience.
Great. That's great.
I love that. Yes.
So if I can ask you a quick question, Wayne, just a couple of things when we talk about this idea of resilience in the middle of this, really what is a storm? And in our audience, we have everything from HR professionals to, obviously entrepreneurs, business owners, regular people. And, I mean, here's one of the things that a lot of people have said to me, and they've been really blunt. They've said, Abe, before COVID-19, my life wasn't very good. And now COVID-19 is here. How in the world am I supposed to do anything better now that basically the world's fallen apart? And I know that you do a lot of work around, helping people understand their story and helping people to understand, that story can either, disempower you or it can empower you. So, you are a clinical psychologist, you've done a lot of great work. And so tell us about, that kind of individual. Like what could you offer that person who's really come to COVID already in a crisis, and now COVID's just added to that?
Yeah. In some sense, and I hope people don't take it the wrong way, but sometimes when I'm working with somebody who's sort of digging their heels in, I say, well, what have you got to lose? Let's weigh the pros and cons of this. What's going to happen if you don't do anything versus what's going to happen if we actually try something? And it's amazing how I've worked with people who said, Wayne, I don't understand it, but I'm going to try it anyways. And it's amazing how when they see something and they see it shifting, all of a sudden some light bulbs come on. Oh, that's what you're talking about. So let's do more of it, right? And so sometimes it's helping people to reframe their situation. Okay, if we continue with this, what are the logical outcomes of this? What if we tried this? And this idea of actually being with somebody to kind of coach some of those steps forward is really important, because I don't expect people to kind of pick it out of the air and figure it out. But part of what I would show people is the brain science behind this, is that when you actually try something and step out of your comfort zone and you actually start to see things changing, it actually starts to rewire your brain out of those old patterns and actually creates opportunities for developing new neural. And so therefore it's about, again, not so much knowing something, but actually trying something. We learn when we actually put knowledge to experience. That's how we rewire our brain so that we can think more proactively or think outside the box or think about what might be, as opposed to my life is falling around me. Because that creates a whole series of hormones that are actually limit your brain, your ability to think outside the box, to actually try pro-social activities. So it's in my mind, it does take courage, but courage is about not being, not so much not being afraid, but doing things because you know they're right, even when you're afraid. So this does involve a level of courage, which everybody has the potential for. But I would also invite people to reflect back on when were the times that you did change? Who were the people in your life? What were people saying to you? How were you thinking? Because it's actually those qualities that you want to bring back to the surface again in order to engage on those, because you've had periods in your life where you've done amazing things. So go back and reflect on them. And what was it that you were doing? How were you thinking? What were you experiencing? And then use that as your template for trying to step into the unknown. And in my mind, if you're going to develop a resiliency or a thriving mindset, your goal is actually to be 70% of the time into the unknown. Out there just trying things, navigating, learning about who you are, because it's actually when you're outside your comfort zone that you actually establish who you are as a person, your strengths, your character traits, your value system. And that's where you establish that ability to thrive.
That's awesome.
This is incredible. I hope everyone's just, we can't see your faces, but if you haven't, you're just tuning in, you tuned in at a really, really good point. Dr. Wayne, that is absolutely incredible. And ironically, I was reminded of this when I was watching. I don't know if there's any parents out there in our webinar, but I was reminded of this when we were watching Frozen 2, of all things. And the girl's in the cave and it's dark and she's just experienced the depths of despair. And what is the advice she gets? Just do the next right thing. Frozen 2, there you go, everyone. Dr. Wayne, there's another question that came in. Curiosity. How do you continue to build and strengthen resiliency when we are the people that people rely on the most for strength? So this must be a leader. What are some new practices in this particular time?
Yeah, good question. My fundamental starting point with anybody that's in leadership is you can't teach anything that you're not practicing. And so part of this is it your belief system, and are you stepping out, engaging the concepts of resilience, building your capacity to thrive? Because if you are, then that's going to change your language. It's going to change the way you connect with people. And your starting point with anybody is that you have to establish trust and safety. If people are safe with you, they will actually listen to what you have to offer. If they don't feel safe, or there's expectations placed on them where they feel like they're going to be judged or they're going to be evaluated by it, then they'll only respond to you in ways that they think you want to hear, which isn't really about who they are. So I have a little kind of a model I do training around, and it's called Connect, Inspire, Build, and Empower. And how we work with people is, do I know their story? Do I know what's important to them? Do I know what their passions are? So that I acknowledge to them that they're of value, that they're important to the success of who we are as a team, a company, an organization, and that without them, we won't reach our goals. So, like a simple thing is, hey, I'm having a meeting on Monday and I need you to be there because we have a crisis to solve. Well, when you actually say that to somebody, they just think about all weekend, oh, I bet you I'm the reason they're asking for the meeting. I'm probably part of the problem and I'm going to get raked over the coals. As opposed to coming to the person and saying, something, we've got a meeting that we're going to take on a challenge that our organization is taking on because we're going to get better at what we do. And I need you to be there because you have some thoughts and ideas that are going to be important for us to be successful with. Well, the response of that person on both of those, one is fear. The other is an invitation to, oh, I'm part of something important and they like me and they value me. Awesome. I'm going to be thinking all weekend about how I can add to that picture. And when we interact with people, establishing trust and safety, as a result of that, they should feel inspired. They should feel inspired that they're important and that they can do things and they can add unique things to what you have as an organization. Then when you build, because you've laid the foundation now, they're safe, they're inspired, they're receptive, and then start with the strengths that they bring. Provide opportunities to build new strengths by stepping out of the comfort zone. So create a culture where people are curious, they're trying different things, they're learning from the mistakes, but they're sharing that with you and their colleagues in order to get better at it. But it creates a culture where ultimately you want individuals to take ownership. You want them to have confidence that what they're doing is going to add value to your larger vision. So you need to be clear about your expectations. You need to be clear about the vision of the organization and how that person can use their strengths in order to add that value and success. And at the end of the day, you want to know, have I empowered the people around me? Because you're not going to be successful as a leader if you don't have these amazing people around you wanting you to be successful. So it's a culture of your mindset and your paradigm. Yeah.
I love the idea of creating a culture of a safe place to ease anxiety, bring us out of the back of our brain, back to our prefrontal cortex. That's amazing. What would you say to people who are now working isolated? So, like you have your team times on Zoom or whatever platform, and now you're kind of left to yourself to build yourself up. How does this work? You create the safe place for people when you're meeting with them, but then you need to stay inspired. You need to stay resilient. How do we do that on our own?
Yeah. There's a couple of things. I'll tell you personally what I do. I usually start reading things I never thought I had time for. And it's amazing how I'm being introduced to ideas I never thought of. So I'm feeling inspired by these new things and how it might add to the picture going forward. I definitely have my inner circle of people that I reach out to. And it's not about, hey, a business thing. It's just about how are you doing? A phone call to a family member, a phone call is just keeping in touch with people. And then the other part is that I can feel alone. And it's not wrong to reflect. It's not wrong to take mindfulness. It's not wrong to actually, I thought about exercising, but I'm going to start exercising now because I've got time for it. We can build. But it's important that you develop a routine. You can't be just sitting in the room saying, I'm sad, I'm lonely. You've got to have some type of structure that I get up, I read for a little bit, I do some exercise, I work on some tasks, so that you have a sense of productivity, that you're actually functioning and moving towards something. And then the idea of make sure that you're connecting with people. So I have a simple exercise sometimes, because sometimes the people you reach out to might not be the support system you're looking for. And one of the exercises I do in training around leadership is, who are the people that are in your inner circle? Because they oftentimes determine your sense of who you are or play a strong role in that. So make a list of 10 people and which ones are adding to your picture and which ones aren't. So eliminate the ones that aren't. Stick and put your focus on the other 3 people that are actually adding. So use phone calls, use text, use whatever it is, Zoom, have a face-to-face with people, and just have opportunities to say, hey, I was thinking about you. How's it going? Is there anything I can do to help you? Because oftentimes the best way for people to sort of get over their own sense of who they are is to take an interest in other people. Participate in helping others. It gives you an immense sense of satisfaction and of value, because you're adding to a picture, even though you feel like I need to look after myself.
That's amazing.
So when, one kind of burning question as well, and folks, in the chat window, please do feel free to throw your questions in there and we'll for sure get to them. But, obviously as managers and leaders, we're not all mental health experts, that's for sure. Sometimes, we're part of the problem, let's be honest, and yet I know a lot of managers and leaders have reached out to us through this time, and they've said, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert, but how can I help the mental health of my people through this, right? Because my people are stressed. Nobody feels safe. Even if, you and that, employee have a good rapport, I think that there's a lack of safety in general out there today, right? Due to a situation beyond our control. So what advice could you give to managers who would say, help me, support the mental health of my people, help me, what are some tips, some strategies for supporting that process, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of times organizations have different settings, but one of the things I think is you got to create space for people to connect and rituals around that. So maybe it's at the very start of the day where you're all having coffee around it and you're kind of talking about, hey, how are things going? What's the vision for today? And anybody got some creative ideas they're going to try? Or did you have some successes yesterday? Let's share them. So it's a bit of a kind of a, I don't like to say kumbaya, but it is. It's a kind of a sense of getting together. You're on the same team. You're aware of each other. And then on a more personal level, I think between managers, I think there needs to be an invitation to say, you need to know my door's open.
Nice.
You can come and talk. And if it's something that I can support you on, I'm going to step up to the plate. And if it's not something that I can support you with, I'll make sure you get the right resources for it. So people that you're working with need to know that they're going to be cared for. Okay. And that you're going to be open to that and responsive to their concerns or ideas or whatever it is that might be on their mind at that point in time. Yeah, they just need to know that there's going to be somebody there that is truly going to listen to understand and not listen to direct.
That's great. Thank you.
I wonder if people are really is it really that simple? Like I can imagine what people are thinking while you're talking there, Wayne. And is it really that simple? Listening, creating safe spaces, creating ritual around connection. Like, what would you say to someone who's asking, like, I don't know if it's really that simple?
Yeah. That's. I think what I found over my 30 years of practice is that the simpler it gets, the more effective it is. We've taken the humanness out of our organizations. That face-to-face contact, that ability to sit down and be real with each other, to talk about things that are important as opposed to the facade of, I can't let you see any of my weaknesses, therefore I won't be a good employee or a manager. You know, I oftentimes find that when I actually talk about things that are more personal to me, people open up. People around me feel safe because there's, you know, I think it's at some point you've got to let people know that you're human too, and that you have concerns in your own life, and that it's together that we'll get through this, that you're not on your own. So yeah, I mean, you could go deeper on that and try different things, but it's a paradigm shift in our thinking. It's a paradigm shift in the culture of our organizations. And we have to get back to valuing the humanness that we bring to the organization, because it's the humanness factor that people connect with, not your programs.
Right.
It's the people, it's the relationships. And research is really clear on this. You can have an amazing program with content and stuff like that, but if you bring the humanness factor into it, where people say, you know, I was talking to you on the phone and I really liked the questions you asked, and now that I meet you, I get why, because of who you are and how you connect, they become incredibly dedicated to you. They want to make things work as opposed to you trying to justify your existence.
Yeah. And what would you say to someone asking, well, maybe this is so new for them, because we have grown in a work culture now that has not celebrated vulnerability and the humanity of people. What would you say to someone who's nervous to step out to be vulnerable, especially right now? There's a lot of emotion, and your emotion may vary throughout the entire day. You may feel great right now, and an hour from now we're feeling anxiety. What would you say to someone who wants to step out to be vulnerable with their team but isn't sure how?
Yeah, well, start in small ways. Start with your language. You know, when you meet somebody and say, how are you doing today? Don't say it as you're walking by them. Actually stop, look them in the eyes and say, how are you doing? And if they respond, take the time to listen. We live in an amazing culture where we did those trivial things. But, you know, to also, you know, whether you do it in small ways, but affirm people when you see them doing what you want them to do. Hey, I like, you know, it could be just a note that says, you know, I really like the way you handled that customer the other day. Thanks. I'm glad you're on our team. So connect with people in language, connect with people by observing what they do right, and celebrate successes. When you've got something maybe happening as a team or whatever, make sure that people are acknowledged when they actually rose up, stepped out of their comfort zone, tried something that was successful. Being a manager, in my mind, is 80% relationship, 20% expertise. And I would say the same thing to parents. I would say the same thing to anybody. It's how you connect with people, because when people feel valued by the little things that you do, they're actually more interested in the big things you want them to be part of.
I find it very interesting how so much of what you're saying relates to all areas of our lives. And perhaps maybe we've been thrown off. We've been trying to do a work culture in a way that just doesn't work for life in general. And we've been trying to work our homes that way in our own personal lives. We have check boxes. We're checking off ourselves. We're checking off what our kids do. We're checking off what our employees do. And I love what you're saying. I mean, I feel like everything you're mentioning right now works for work, for ourselves, and for our homes as well.
Yeah. No, it's and you know, if you do have to kind of step up and sort of challenge somebody, there's a golden rule I have. You know, make sure you compliment them 2 or 3 times before you invite them into doing something different. Tied back to the brain science. So everybody needs to know that in part of your brain, there's this thing called the amygdala. We oftentimes refer to it as the lizard part of our brain, the primitive part. And that was that part of our brain that kept us alive from, you know, being eaten by a dinosaur or a tiger or whatever. We had this sense of scanning our environment for threats. Well, that's still alive and well. Like your employees have an amygdala, and if it is geared towards being not secure in the workplace, it scans their environment 3 to 4 times every second, looking for a threat. And when it sees a nonverbal or a casual glance that they perceive as a threat, they emotionally shut down for the next 2 to 3 hours. They're almost incapacitated around how they respond. And so the art is, how do I get by the amygdala into the limbic system, which is where I create emotions and positive feelings, because that's where people start to feel safe. If they start to have those positive feelings, that little, hey, thanks for being here today. I'm glad you're here today. Can I get you a coffee? Those are the little things that start to create those positive emotions. And it also creates what we call a hormone called oxytocin, which actually goes to the heart. The brain is connected to the heart through a number of neural pathways. And if you actually create that, that's that feeling you have when you're with somebody, and it could have been a friendship that you had 20 years ago, and you meet them again, and it's almost like nothing ever changed. You're comfortable with them, you're safe with them, you talk about things with them, and that's kind of the concept that you want to build into your organization, so that when people come to work, they're not coming because it's going to be an onerous task or they're scared. They're coming because they want to change the world through what you're doing. And they want to be part of that. It's almost a relationship that goes so deep that they see a dedication and will do things above and beyond what you ever expected of them. But it all starts back with how I connect with you.
Hmm. Is anyone in that group chat getting just totally filled up right now? Well, there's people who are just feeling this with you, Dr. Wayne. Bill, he loves that culture of a safe place and humanness, and Amy is loving it. And I think people are just so hungry for this. And what an opportunity right now. I was in a business meeting this morning, and someone mentioned that the Chinese word for crisis is danger, but also opportunity.
Yeah.
I thought, isn't that neat? And I love what you're saying about just that fight or flight. I heard a stat that says that we live 70% of our day in the back of our brain. Is that true?
Yeah, that's if you have a certain mindset. So I think people actually have 4 different mindsets. There's a survival mindset. So people who experience a trauma or hurt in their lives, and they don't trust anybody, and so they're going through the day just reactive. You'll see them. They're, and then there's another one called what we refer to as a managing mindset. So you're sort of looking around and you're sort of picking and choosing what you want to engage in or how you respond to things. And then we have what we call a striving mindset. So these individuals in general look from the outside doing well, and they seem to engage in things. They seem to be very positive, but it's really interesting. If you monitor them, they'll actually only engage in things that they know there's a high degree of success in. They don't like to step out of their comfort zone. And so ideally what you want to do is create a culture that takes people up by creating safety, by creating a sense that you're important to us. We need you to be part of the solution, and we want you to be continually stepping out of your comfort zone so that we innovate as an organization. And so that thriving mindset is where I want people to be, where they feel personally empowered, where they feel adaptable, where they feel like, if I actually don't try different things, I'm not going to improve my ability to perform or to become better at what I do. And so we want people out there. Now, I don't want people going out and doing, radical things that might put other things at risk, but in the context of your role and your opportunities, these people are exciting people to be around because they have this sense of confidence. That's what's going to keep your organization in the game. Your organization now, or whatever it is, has to start learning to not just be resilient and bounce from a crisis, but it has to learn how to bounce forward. And that's why I moved to the concept of flourishing and well-being, because when people feel safe, when they're thriving, they have a sense of confidence. They have a sense of personal empowerment. They have a sense of connecting. They have good critical thinking skills. They are able to problem solve. They're continuous learners. And they live a life based on a set of clear values. What's important to me? What's right and wrong? And when they bring this together, they have an ability to sort of do things in amazing ways, but in innovative ways.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Bill is asking, how do you work with a superintendent or a boss when they're not enlightened?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Yeah, what I have found is that some people, because of their position, whatever it was. Maybe it was the oftentimes people are, it's really interesting when I take up some of the businesses, people in their late 40s, 50s, and 60s were raised on a model of management that was about directing people. I'm going to tell you what to do, and I want to see it done by the end of the week. And so it was less relational because it was an era where people were more concerned about, you know, I need to get an income to, you know, raise my family. And some of these managers are really struggling because they don't know how to connect with them. And so part of what I've learned is that how can these individuals come and meet? And sometimes I think you have to sit down with the person and say, you know, I know this is the expectation you have of me. I was wondering if you would be okay if I try some of these things. And this is the way I'm kind of functioning and working towards. The key is get their permission. Don't try to change them. Get their permission and then demonstrate to them that you actually will do amazing things. Because if you make them look good, they feel pretty good about it.
Yes, isn't that the truth? Joe Jean is asking, how can we encourage the thriving mindset? Is this even possible without a lot of groundwork?
Well, I mean, there's different things you can do, right? I mean, we've developed a model where you can actually take a questionnaire and know where you're at. Also realize that if you're actually embracing a thriving mindset, if you're there 60 to 70% of the time, you're amazing. There's going to be times when you have the other mindsets because of your circumstances. So for example, for myself, when my parents passed away, they passed away fairly close to each other. It just kicked everything out from underneath me. My whole value system of what I thought was important, all those kind of things. And there was a period of time when I seriously was. Now, I also knew what it meant to thrive, and so I was able to work out of that fairly quickly. But you evolve your mindset based on engaging in experiences that start to sort of solidify your pathways of thinking, your perception of yourself and how you understand the world around you. And the more you do it, the more predominant it is, that's what you will default to, no matter what challenge you actually engage. And so it's more of an issue of probability as opposed to, oh, I'm a thriving mindset, aha, I've arrived. No, that's not the case.
I think you cut out there, Wayne.
Sorry. Yeah, am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So part of it is where am I at in my own mindset and being mindful and reflective of when I'm thriving and how do I feel versus when I slip back into a particular mindset and what's happening, what my circumstances and how to get back out of it fairly quickly. But as a leader in an organization, learn the art of being able to identify the mindsets. Because if a person in survival and managing, you don't start by telling them what to do. You start by connecting and saying, I want to better understand where you're coming from so that I can support you to be successful. Those individuals need to know that you're actually going to create safety for them before they're going to step out and do things that you want. So there's a sequence of strategies that you need to kind of put into your tool belt and know how to identify it, know how to respond to it. The more you do it, you heighten the probability that these individuals are going to shift their way of thinking and how they see themselves, therefore respond to you differently. And even in your own life, be constantly pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and solidifying those neural pathways. And in my training workshops, I actually show a video of how new neural pathways are developed in the brain. It's an actual brain where the pathways are coming together based on a kid being hugged. And it's amazing how it works. And so it's a bit of a faith journey, but you know, even as a practitioner, I will never go back to labeling people because labels are dangerous. It's okay that we understand certain limitations that we might have, but don't allow the limitations to define who you are or your employees, because that's not who they are. They have so much potential, and it's our job as colleagues or supervisors or friends to help people become the best version of who they are.
Yeah, this is so phenomenal, Dr. Wayne, and we haven't even gotten to what you have already prepared. Why don't we go into that? Dr. Wayne, what did you prepare to say to us today? Just because I've noticed that the questions, I think you're leaving everyone in awe and lots to chew on. But what did you bring today to speak about when it comes to being resilient now?
How much time do I have? You're asking me to cram 25 years of experience into a 15-minute talk.
No small task, right? I believe, Abe, you can confirm this. I believe we have 10 or 15 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, take your liberty. We're recording this, and so if people have to hop off, that's okay, because we'll make the recording available. But just we try to stay to sort of a lunch hour, so
Okay.
take 15 minutes, and just love to hear what's on your heart.
All right. Hey, is there a way for me to actually put a little PowerPoint up? And then I can give this PowerPoint to people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe you have the possibility to share your screen at the bottom where it says share?
Right.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to, it says you cannot share screen while others participate as sharing. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Can you guys see it right now?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay. Is it showing up now?
No, just go to share screen at the bottom, and then you should be able to select the one that you want to share.
Okay, here it is.
Right on.
Are we on?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I apologize for the little glitch here.
No problem.
So this is, so in my mind, you're kind of stepping into the world of strength-based practice, which is sort of an evolving model of theory of, if we focus on what's right as opposed to what's wrong, we'll get better at how to address what's wrong and move it in a positive direction. So this slide actually has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that life isn't always fair, and so sometimes we face things and it's out of our control. And but we all grow up with experiences that we start developing a sense of labels around. So, when I was younger as a student, I was in grade 3, and I had a teacher that said, "Wayne, you're never going to accomplish anything. Matter of fact, I think you're stupid." Well, I bought into that label for a long period of time, and it wasn't until my mid-20s that I went back to school and got a 4.0 for the next 15 years. But that label held me back. And we need to sometimes reflect on, what are the labels that we have about ourselves? Do they enhance who we are, or are they holding us back from our potential? Because I believe that everybody's just doing what they need to survive. And Brentro does some really interesting work around this concept of painful emotions lead to painful thinking, which leads to painful behavior. And so how you feel about certain things is going to influence how you think, therefore what you actually act on going forward. So life is not straight line, riding the bike to the flag. Like, we oftentimes have this view that life should be stress-free. It should be, well, if it is, you'll never learn anything. Because reality is that you're going to have ups and downs. And it's in the downs that you actually realize who you are, what your strengths are. So we embrace those periods of time so that when we actually get to the top, we're going to do things differently, knowing that there's going to be another challenge that comes along, and we're better prepared to handle it. And the other part is that you look through 3 lenses to actually figure out who you are. We oftentimes perceive ourselves by our past mistakes, or we perceive by what we think others want us to be. And what I'm inviting you is to look through the lens of what might be, what your possibilities are, because you are in control of your own journey. Nobody else is. They can influence it, but you can choose whether that influence is adding or taking away from your picture. So it's kind of that half cup full, half cup empty concept. So, but if you want to do something you've never done before, you've got to do something you've never done before. And that's how we learn. And so fear, in my mind, has 2 meanings. You can forget everything and run, or you can face everything and rise. And I believe that fear can be a catalyst for growth. And when we go through, for example, the things that are going on here, fear is alive and well. And people can choose how they respond to it. And so I developed this model of, we have a tendency to stay in our comfort zone in that blue circle down at the bottom. And that fear zone around it is going to determine whether we're actually going to grow our potential or not. And so oftentimes fear is we feel we don't have the right skills, or I can't do it. I've never done that before. Others are going to think I'm a failure. Well, part of this is you've got to sort of embrace the fear and step out into the learning zone and try things. Learn from your mistakes. Learn to try to navigate challenges. Maybe there's new skills you need to add. Now, I don't want you to stop there. I actually want you to get right up into the growth zone. And that's where you actually are, where you're creating new things that you've never done before. And so that's the process that I'm inviting people into, a journey of how you embrace life, whether it's as a partner in a relationship, or a parent, or an employee, or a person who might be supervising. You can create a culture that takes this all into consideration. Now, learning things and actually knowing what to do with it are two different things. And we have a culture where we put a high value on people knowing something, but they may not be able to practice it. And so what I'm encouraging you is that learn things, but make sure you're always tying it to experience. And this gets into some of Carol Dweck's work around the whole growth versus fixed mindset. And she showed us that it's when you step out of your comfort zone that your brain actually comes alive, that you're actually touching parts of your brain that are developing whole new neural pathways, et cetera. It's when you're doing something that you can repeat without even thinking is you're not learning. So here's an example of what a neural pathway looks like. This is an actual neural screen of a brain and an actual connection being made. Now that only happens when you try something you've never done before. And it actually develops a new pattern. And if you actually take a look at the science behind it, that on the neural receptors and how it transmits through, it actually starts to develop a calcium around it concept that actually hardens, which then solidifies it as a default pattern that you go to when you're feeling stressed or whatever. So the more you practice it, the more it becomes a way of doing. And so part of this whole brain science is, as I said to you, that amygdala is where your feelings are, the limbic, your neocortex, your conviction. And this is just a pattern of how you think about things, how you experience it, how you develop the behaviors around how you repeat it to create a conviction. And so you can create that. Now, I won't go into too much depth on here, but I developed this model of how we connect, inspire, build, and empower. And you can create that pattern within your organization, personally or at an organizational level. But this is kind of the formula for thinking like a thriver. If you change your thoughts, you'll change your beliefs. If you change your beliefs, you'll change your expectations. If you change your expectations, you'll change your attitude. If you change your attitude, you'll change your behavior. If you change your behavior, you will change your performance. If you change your performance, you change your life. It's a sequence of feeling, thought, behavior, conviction. So you all come with different mindsets. You can't help it. Your life experiences have played a role in determining what you've decided to sort of accept. And so when we take a look at the models of change, especially flourishing, your personal environment of, are you self-aware? Have you developed the right interpersonal skills, the social emotional intelligence, the self-management, self-regulation of your feelings around anxiety, depression, fear, and do you look after yourself, the self-care? And then who are in your actual environments that support you, whether it's work, et cetera. And then what I've looked at is some of the internal soft skills that people need to develop. And so your personal strengths and your environmental strengths actually establish your resilience. But it's your actual soft skills that actually develop your ability to perform, to actually navigate challenges in very constructive ways and create new ways of doing things, which is your competence, which then is your flourishing. And so when our research takes a look at it, when you have low flourishing, you have a tendency to experience a number of the characteristics on the left-hand side. When you actually establish high flourishing, you actually experience almost the polar opposites of them. So barriers to developing one's resilient mindset or thriving mindset is your personal beliefs. And then how do you respond to challenges and fear? What are the negative scripts that you've embraced, and how do you reframe those, and your degree of personal control. If you think life is about controlling yourself, then you're dead in the water, because there's a lot of things you can't control. So you need to understand, what do I have an influence on, and what is it that I have to sort of say that's somebody else's issue, or another environmental influence that because if you try to control everything, you'll get exhausted. So developing a thriving mindset, I think, comes from certain qualities. It's about developing a sense of personal empowerment, to rewrite your own negative scripts and determine who you are, what your values are. It's about managing stress, because actually stress is a catalyst for growth. If I'm stressed about something, it's an indication that I should maybe be doing something different or in different ways. Making connections, making sure you've got people on your inner circle versus your outer circle. You need to be with people. You need to commune. You need to feel valued, accepted. Your SCI, your social emotional intelligence, being empathetic, to view life through the eyes of others. A lot of the times when we have conflict with people is because we're imposing our judgment on them, as opposed to truly listening to why they're doing what they're doing. So you can say to somebody, hey, why did you do that? Didn't we talk about that yesterday? Versus, that's an interesting choice. I would never have thought of that. Why was it important to you? One's a judgment, one's an encouragement to talk. So it's just simple language of ways of viewing things. And dealing effectively with problems, being a critical thinker. Knowing that you need to sometimes weigh the pros and cons of things and have equitable outcomes and things that are fair. But you need to be a good problem solver. Developing one's islands of competence. Getting a better understanding of really what you're really good at, and building off of that and adding to that repertoire as you go forward. Establishing realistic goals and expectations. Oftentimes I find that people have very unrealistic perspectives of who they are or what they expect from other people. Being a continuous learner. Always look for new ways of thinking, new ways of developing a sense of competence around what you're doing or what you're focusing on. Living a life based on a clear set of values. I don't know how often, I'm faced with choices, but it's actually my values that help me to navigate through them, because I don't want to engage in things that go contrary to what I consider important or how I want to be respectful to other people. And self-care, which is something that's becoming more and more, I think, apparent, but do you look after yourself? Even as simple as, do you forgive yourself when you make a mistake? Because if you can't forgive yourself, you're not going to pass that on to other people. Are you engaging in healthy behaviors, eating, exercise? And are you developing your value system? Because it's your value system ultimately that's going to play a big role in how you see yourself, how you treat others. So it's not an exact science. It's a process of growth. It's a continuous journey from birth until the day we die. I always throw this out, that life's not a matter of holding good cards, but playing a poor hand well. You've got certain things. Everybody's got gifts. They just sometimes don't recognize them. And it's about figuring out what those are. And you can do it through a number of things, whether it's through coaching or assessments and different things. But just remember that it's your soft skills that actually are going to be the key to your success, not your hard skills. Anybody can learn to type or whatever, but it's your soft skills that allow you to use your hard skills in effective ways. I always tell people, you may be hired because of your hard skills, but it'll be your soft skills that get you promoted. And we need people who are more in tune with what those soft skills are. Because you learn them not out of a textbook, you learn them in experience. So how to persevere, how to be empathetic, how to be a team player, how to be a critical thinker. Those are all concepts that we learn in relationships or experiences that we learn through other people. So yeah, the journey of flourishing is amazing. As a practitioner, I used to use the DSM, and 40 years ago, DSM had 40 categories, and now it has over 550 categories of what's wrong with us. So we're really good in our society of sort of identifying what's wrong and therefore what needs to be fixed. But I found in my practice that people do not want to be fixed, they want to be valued. And relationship is 85% of the learning factor. There's a number of research studies out there. You can have content and direction and protocol, but it's when people feel safe, when they feel valued, that they actually respond to those in a much more effective way. So the idea of flourishing is not an isolated island thing. We're in community, we're in organizations, we're in relationships, and that is actually where we learn about ourselves and actually develop the capacity to flourish.
Well, let's just drop the mic right there. Oh, is anyone else feeling like you just had a really, really great meal? It was absolutely phenomenal. Lots to chew on. Some people were asking, can I get this PowerPoint? How do I re-listen to this? We send this out every week on our email. We are recording this, so you'll get the PowerPoint. You can go back, you can pause, you can really reflect on this because these are so good. And be encouraged, Dr. Wayne. Lots of great comments on the side as well.
I'm just hoping that we added to your noon lunch. So that's awesome.
No, that's great. And like Connie was saying, we do send this out by recording, but you have to be on our email list for that to happen, obviously. So if you'd like to get on that, send Connie a note. She's got the easiest email address ever. It's just Connie@wellnessinnovate.com. How easy is that, right? That's Connie@wellnessinnovate.com. But, Wayne, you and I have worked together so much over the years that, I forgot just how smart you are. And, you're so brilliant. And, one of the things that you were talking about, was this idea of creating safety. And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I think this is worth asking, what's a couple of things, again, I think just because no one feels safe right now, the situation is preventing that. Yeah. So I'm a manager, I'm a leader, I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. What can I do to create safety for those around me when so much is not controllable right now?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Make sure that you're interacting with people in ways that are personal, that they feel valued.
Okay.
Be predictable, that you're always available for them, and create opportunities for them to actually experience success, because that feeling that they're going to have is the exact opposite of the fear that they're wrestling with.
Okay.
And the more you create those feelings, the more they're going to have a sense of, oh, I actually can do things, I can make choices, and things can change in my life.
Right on. That's great. Well, we just want to conclude with a couple of quick thoughts. Obviously, they are saying that COVID-19 is the perfect storm for depression, anxiety, and suicide. That's kind of scary. And, I think it's also true that it's the perfect storm for social isolation and, frankly, workplace deterioration, right? I mean, because, like, Dr. Wayne was saying, a lot of those, connections can easily get fragmented and frayed at this particular time. And, it's funny because I obviously put this slide together a while ago, but, when Dr. Wayne is talking today, truthfully, hardly anyone feels safe. And, that could be physical safety. Maybe they're concerned about COVID-19. It could be family safety. I talked to a friend who has, a family member in ICU right now due to COVID-19. So of course, they're not feeling safe. It could be financial, right? This is an economic storm, unlike anything we have, any of us in our generation have ever seen. And so, here's what I think, and I think you alluded to this, Dr. Hammond. In the midst of adversity, opportunity always does abound, right? It's certainly not, that we would choose the situation, but we can choose the story. And, and so, at Wellness Innovate, we do have tools to help you not only manage the mayhem, but to thrive through it. And with integrity to rise strong. And so you might say, well, what does that look like? What do your tools look like, Connie? What does the toolkit look like, Abe? And, number one, it looks like conversations. I mean, you can't create safety for people without having authentic and heart-centered and non-judgmental conversations. Even if we're all dealing with very serious matters, we need to have conversation. And I can tell you that Connie and myself were absolutely available for that. I think it also looks like coaching, right? Once you feel safe, now what? What are you going to do? And so, this is where coaching, I think, is such a part of the package. And so many of you have been on our webinars, and that is wonderful. Thank you for that. But one of the things we've been doing, Connie and I, is a lot of webinars within the context of workplaces, organizations. And why is that? Because a lot of the time, your people might need a different voice, not a different message, but a different voice, right? And so I just want you to consider reaching out to us, because there's so many great topics where we can support what you're saying, same message, but perhaps with a different voice and a different perspective. And for some organizations, it might look like training. Honestly, downtime is the best time to be doing some training. And I'm like, I don't know about you professionally, I'm running off my feet right now, but I know that some folks, they're just not able to work right now. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. I think Connie and I are kind of lucky in that a lot of our work can happen remotely, but maybe you're in that situation where it can't happen remotely, or your hours are restricted. And you might want to just, tap your manager on the shoulder, not physically, but maybe with a text message or something, and just say, hey, why don't we get some training on communication in crisis, or decision making in crisis, or building personal resilience, or that kind of a thing. And at the end of the day, let's rise strong together. I think we do need to be socially connected during this time, and certainly not socially distant. That's the worst term anybody ever invented. But I think we need to be physically distant and yet community connected and connected to experts. And so please consider that. Thank you so much, Dr. Wayne. This was incredible. Next week, we have Vince Fowler. So Connie, why don't you tell us a little bit about Vince, just so that we can be anticipating this next week.
Yeah, well, Dr. Wayne, you set the bar really high, just so you know. Vince Fowler, he is an he was in the Army. And so he's got lots of practical skills that he learned from the Army of how to combat crisis, overcome post-traumatic stress disorder. And he's an amazing coach as well. Very personable, probably will share some of his own personal story. So it is going to be a very dynamic, inspiring, but also lots of tools given in next week's webinar. And then Abe, we have a conference coming up too.
Yes, we absolutely do. So tell us a little bit about this crazy, crazy conference that's so packed with value for people.
Well, we've been really scoping where everyone is at. We're really leaning in and listening. So the things that we're providing right now, these webinars, the people that we bring on the webinars, they're all in response of deep listening to people. And what are people saying? What are people needing? And we really felt the call to give people the ability to rise strong. And I feel like Dr. Wayne has given us so much to do that today, as well as this conference. You don't want to miss it. You want to get your team on this conference. It's a webinar conference. We have Catherine Emberley, who is the president of Shaw, Karen Young, the CEO of the United Way, Tony McGrath, the CEO of the Grand, James McCara, the CEO of the Calgary Food Bank, Graham Sherman, the founder of Toolshed Beer, Gil Carlos, the owner of Broken Yoke. These people have been through storms. They've had to rebuild, where they're going to share how they've rebuilt in the past. They're going to share what they're doing right now. And we're not holding anything back, because right now people are crying out for what actually really works. We're not going to give you fluff. We're not going to give you just words. We're going to give you meat and things to really chew on, because, there is always the opportunity in crisis to come out stronger. It's always there. And Dr. Wayne, you brought that up today. And I hope that everyone is going to leave here feeling ready to face their week and to learn new things and to connect well.
Yeah, and I really love that, Connie, because even we've noticed as we started on this journey a month or so ago here in Alberta and Canada, and we know that we have viewers from literally all over the world. But, here's the bottom line is when this started, the emotions were running so high and there was so much so much stress and so much fear out there that people weren't ready for solutions. It's like Dr. Wayne said, you can't tell someone what to do or start strategizing until people feel safe. And I think not that in any way we want to tell you what to do, but what we have brought together in this online conference is some incredible experts who will share at least some of their story and some of their journey and where they're going. And so, you can search Rise Strong. I did it myself this morning just to check it out on Eventbrite. The date is April the 22nd. We're going to be going from, about 11:45 maybe to 2:30, something like that. There's no cost. And, why do we do that? And how is it that we can line up such great speakers? Well, number one, they all want to give back. So you're going to be hearing from not only the for-profit sector, but as you can tell, the not-for-profit. The other thing that we do want to do, though, is in lieu of a registration payment, we really do encourage you to support the Calgary and area food bank right now. And, so James McCara, who's a friend of mine, the CEO there, he'll be talking a little bit about what's happening at the food bank. And believe me, he won't be making a pitch. That's not the kind of person he is. But we sure would love it if we collectively could do something significant, because that is one organization that is not shutting down through COVID-19. As a matter of fact, the need for their services going forward is probably going to be greater than they ever have before. And that is crazy. I mean, I can't think of another nonprofit in this town that services over 200,000 unique people every single year. I mean, you just wrap your mind around that. You just can't imagine. And so, that is, honestly, what's going to be happening on April 22nd. Go to Eventbrite, go there now, because you got to get your ticket, and please do that. And then please also, folks, make sure you follow us. There's some social media channels there. You may have heard of Facebook, some of you out there, or Instagram. We're also on LinkedIn as well, believe it or not, all under Wellness Innovate. And so, Dr. Hammond, any final words from you this morning, or this afternoon, I guess now, and then we'll turn it over to Connie for a close.
Yeah, well, no, it's been a pleasure being here, and I really appreciate people taking time out of the day just so I can share some thoughts and support this effort. One of the things that I would encourage everybody to do is when you get out and from your lunch, or first person you meet, why don't you inspire them? Why don't you just say, hey, something? I just like the fact that you're here. Or whoever you meet first, whether it's on the phone, video, whatever. First thing I want you to do is to affirm them.
That sounds great. So we have our homework, everyone. Find somebody to affirm. The first person I can see right now is my 9-year-old. So I'm going to affirm my 9-year-old, and then I'm going to affirm anyone else that I see. And I just want to take a moment to affirm you all and remind you that you are more resilient than you think, and you are more than you know. And so we thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Awesome.
Have a great day. And thank you, Dr. Wayne.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you back here next week for Vince Fowler. Take care. Thanks, Connie.
That was so awesome.
Isn't it good?
That was an incredible webinar.